Alright, today I'm going to show you how to make a hard drive installation of Windows 7 where you have a recovery partition that you can use to reinstall Windows or set up the recovery environment in case something goes wrong. Now, you may be familiar with recovery partitions from manufacturers like Dell or Toshiba or ASUS. You may have gotten one on a netbook or laptop previously. If you've had to try and use them before, then you know they're a bit hit and miss. They're not created by people who have a very strong understanding of how Windows works, and they add a lot of software to it, which you usually don't want. So I'm going to run off an ISO for my Windows 7 install disk here, and it's going to a virtual hard drive on my solid state drive. The goal is just to make things as quick as possible here. I've already done this on my host machine that's running Oracle VirtualBox, and it took me about a total of half an hour to set up the partitions, copy Windows to the recovery partition, and then run it from there and install Windows. Naturally, I'm using a modified install disk because I don't want to be putting my own Windows CD key in. So a couple of things may be slightly different, like you'll get asked for your own CD key or to cancel registration and do it once you've fully installed Windows, and you may not get the option here to choose between 64-bit and 86 architecture. And if you do get this option, you usually want to select the 64-bit architecture because most desktops and laptops do run on 64-bit processors. That means also that it can support more than 4 gigabytes of memory or RAM, and it's only really the very cheap or cut down netbooks and some older desktop hardware that still runs on x86. So that's why we're going to select 64-bit. You always want to choose custom when you're doing an install, whether it's Windows or any other application, just because you want to make sure there's not extra fluff in there that you don't want. For example, when you update or install Adobe Flash, it asks you if you want to install A.S.G.A.R.D Smart Scan, and A.S.G.A.R.D is actually widely known for causing issues with Steam and some other gaming platforms games. So if you take the time, pay attention to what you're installing, and actually cancel those, you'll save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of technical issues. Now, as you saw there, when I clicked on a new partition and I created it, it gave me a pop-up box asking if it was okay for the setup disk to create a partition for Windows to put required files on. And that's the system reserved partition here that they're talking about, the 100 megabytes, and the Windows bootloader actually goes on there when you install Windows. It's not on there yet, the partition's just been installed, and we actually want to extend that and use it as our recovery partition. We don't want to keep it at 100 meg. So we need to delete the partition that was created to use up the free space, and then we're going to extend this to 5,120 megabytes or 5 gig. So I'll ask you if you're sure you want to do it because it's not a reversible action. We do certainly want to do that. Click OK, and then here, for the remaining space, you recreate the partition that Windows is actually going on to. Now, you can just click next and install Windows off the disk if you feel like it. It is a bit slower, can be considerably slower depending on your hardware, so I suggest you actually cancel that, yes, and go to repair your computer. And this is how I did it on my host machine. I selected to restore a computer using the system image that you created earlier, because that's pretty much the only way you can select to cancel the backup, cancel the backup GUI or wizard, and then we want to open the command prompt so that we can actually open Notepad. And from Notepad, I can go into computer and I can go into my Windows CD here. The first folder we're going to copy over is the sources folder, because that's all your Windows 7 install files. 3.38 gig, the largest one. We're going to copy it, go to my computer, into the system reserved partition, create a folder called setup, so that we know our Windows setup CD is in there, and then we're going to paste that there and copy that in. Now, this is not a full-blown Windows environment, and this is not Explorer, so you're not going to get a copy or move window box. It's just going to sit there with the cursor having the circular busy or working icon until the files are copied over there, and that's quite alright. That doesn't mean it's frozen or crashed or isn't working. It's just a limitation of the software. There we go, there's sources, and we copy the other folders in as well. You probably don't have to copy all of these in there, but I'm doing it mostly for redundancy. I don't want to give you a tutorial where something could actually go wrong. What is that? One, two, three, four, five. Total of 3.47 gig. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's alright. As you can see, yeah, it is a modified CD image. As I explained before, it's just because I'm not giving you my Windows install key. And that is where we have done so far with working from our Windows 7 CD. You should be able to actually remove it here. Change drive C. You can see there's our setup folder. Oh, there is something I forgot. I forgot to copy over the actual setup files. You select file type all here. You can see that I did miss a couple of files, and they are required for this procedure to work. Not this one, obviously. Now that setup is actually there, I can run setup exit. I can install Windows now. As you can see, because it's running off the disk, I'm now running significantly faster upside to this method is that instead of taking up to 2 hours to expand your Windows files, it should take around 20 minutes. This stage here of expanding Windows files, it's not very reliable with the percentage indicator, so it's quite common for it to stick at 3% or 6% or however much, and to then suddenly bump up to 60% or 90%. Very erratic, so don't trust what it says. Don't assume that the setup has failed or crashed or anything along those lines. Just leave it to do its thing. If your computer is less than 5 years old or so, it should take about an hour at the most. During a Windows 7 install, the monitor will flash a few times as the disk tries to find drivers for your video card and some other features your motherboard might have or other components might have, and that's okay. Just let it run its own course. Let me get this last one. Wonder what's going on here. Hmm, that's strange. There's no problem with the settings here. Here it is there, Windows that actually, yeah. Huh, there we go. Looks like it just plain didn't create the master boot record properly. So there you go. There's another thing that could go wrong. To fire up bootrec and fix MBR. And we're back in our Windows 7 install. Actually, I found that quite odd because I really didn't get that when doing it on my host PC. Alright, you want to always manually choose your Windows updates. There's a good reason for that when you're just installing a new operating system. Same as you always want to do this at home and select home network. That way you don't have any major networking issues. And there we have it. That's Windows 7 totally installed. Next, obviously, I'll go through the processes of doing the first lot of Windows updates and driver installs. For now, I'm just going to manage and show you that the disk actually does still have the system reserve. It doesn't show in Windows until you assign a drive letter to it. I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to assign it the letter Z so that we know it's not one of the other interchangeable media or virtual disks. And there's the rest of my hard drive space. Windows was installed at one I think that's the same time. Oh no, 2009, so that's quite bizarre. Usually it doesn't, well, it does usually use the file version of the install, but it should be actually showing, here we go, 506 code files access, and then some volume information 502. And as we can see by the time marker on OBS, it's taken 23 minutes to get to this stage. You'll obviously see a bit slower using a real media instead of a Windows 7 image on disk. But if you're dumping to a solid state drive like I just did, it should be fairly quick. Like I was saying, even doing this on my host PC, which is running the Oracle VirtualBox, it took me about half an hour total to put the disk in, start up, get the partition sorted, copy it to the hard drive, and then install Windows and get to this same desktop environment. So that's pretty much the tutorial over now. The next tutorial will focus on how to apply your Windows updates correctly from the get-go so you don't get any major issues, and also how to install your drivers, and then we'll look at restoring previous backups of files and program settings and all that sort of stuff. For now, good luck. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you.